Howdy, all. Eck will be with us shortly. We're not going to waste a lot of time on this, but congratulations to the Golden State Warriors on the NBA championship. I was one of those people, Russ, who wanted to see a 16-0 sweep. And I'm not the biggest LeBron fan. I mean, he's a great player, no taking away from that. But there's something about him, especially after he won his championship in Cleveland. He got a little obnoxious this year, and I didn't like that. But I don't think there's a precedent for this at least in the last 50 years since the original 6, where you could conceivably have two teams like Golden State and Cleveland continuing to face each other in the final for maybe another 2 or 3 years because they're just so much better than other teams.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not a LeBron hater either. I actually think he's got a lot of redeeming qualities. I like the way he stands up for people and stands up for causes. He does some things that Michael Jordan never had the guts to do, to be honest, because he was afraid of losing endorsements.
Right.
All that said, I haven't had much interest in this series. I haven't watched a minute of it. I've watched other ones in the past, but I really didn't think Cleveland had a chance, and based on that, I didn't watch. I mean, that was – now, did I want to see the sweep? It didn't matter to me.
Yeah.
It just was a mismatch from the start. I give LeBron full credit that they came back and won a game, but he had to expend so much energy to win that one game that you knew they were never going to win another game. And that's with the best player in the world. So what does that tell you? It's just I don't like it. I don't like the fact that, again, if you took Evgeny Malkin and he called up a few of his Russian friends, Ovechkin and whatever, and they all said, we're going to join the Las Vegas team tomorrow, I guess that would be the equivalent. And we don't see that in the NHL for good reason. Because, again, these guys usually try and battle through and win it themselves. Now, there are players that get traded to winning teams like Ray Bourque and whatever, and I'm not a huge fan of that. But if it's at the end of a career, I get it. I do. And for Bourque, he gave his whole life to the Boston Bruins, so I get it. But for this, Kevin Durant in the prime of his career, easy win, bro. That's all I got.
I don't blame Durant for, like he was – in Seattle, then Oklahoma City, couldn't win, couldn't get over. It was him and Westbrook, and I'm not I'm not a big basketball fan, but when he decided to join the enemy, so to speak, and go to Golden State, I have no problem with it because Golden State manipulated their cap well enough that they could afford a player like Durant. He's not on any kind of like.
But he didn't come in at market value. Whatever. It's the whole thing. Right. It was all nicely done so they could win a championship. They won a championship. I don't think they earned their championship the same way the Penguins did. I'll say that.
And now you'll have Cleveland counter this summer by probably going out and trading for Carmelo Anthony or somebody like that. And it's like the Soviet
two teams in the league. Great.
Yeah. And maybe
I got other news, some hockey-related news. So a lot of people have been asking since we've done our draft show on Hockey Prospect Radio, which will still play up until the draft. I don't have dates and times. You have to check and look on TSN and check with Sirius's schedule when they put it up. I think Sirius is going to start playing it again on Friday. TSN, I'm not sure. Maybe they're going to wait till the weekend again. I don't know. But it'll play a lot. But we got a lot of good feedback. But people kept asking me, where's your list? Where's your list? Your final list? Where's your list? Where is it? It's up. It's up on Sportsology. What I like to do is I like to go through the combine and get the final weights and measures for that, height and weight and everything else. So now they're all in there. I'll warn everybody, if somebody is 6'1", .075, they're 6'2". If somebody is 197 and 3/4 pounds, they're 198. That's how I do the list. I do put half inches for height because I think it's important. But when it comes to weight, I don't care if they're a half pound or 3/4 pound. I round it up. So that's it. Take a look at them. Love them. Rip me on them. It's a year's worth of work. I put a lot of work into these. I mean, I literally go to tournaments and see these guys. I watch video. I watch games. I go to games live. If you want to talk to my wife and ask what the DVR looks like during the year, it's full of hockey. And it's full of all kinds of hockey. So that's it. It's what I do.
Some people record the blacklist. You record the under 18s.
Yeah, and I record that stuff too. But yeah.
Now, okay, let's just do the intro. I think Eck will be here in a few minutes with the latest stuff.
So I didn't say though, go to sportsology.com. Thank you.
Yes, and I retweeted it. So if you follow me on Twitter on Mike and Buffalo, you can see the tweet, the link to Sportsology. Hello, Hockey World. Today is Tuesday, June 13th, 2017.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Before we get into the whole waiving of no movement clauses, which I'm sure Akina and us will talk about, I'm writing something regarding the Maple Leafs, but it can be really carried to other NHL teams, and I think it's pertinent based on what happened just a few days ago with the Penguins winning the Stanley Cup. And we know that the NHL is a copycat league. It always has been. If a team wins with brawn, like if a team like LA wins with big players and a good goaltender, and then people try to copy that. And then if a team wins with speed, then teams try to win. Like Pittsburgh, teams try to win like that. The precedent may have been set, and I think it's really a fallacy that you can win a Stanley Cup with a bunch of, I would say, middle-of-the-road median defenders. The Penguins did it this year without Chris Letang, and we have, Dumoulin, Schultz, Mata, Daly, Ron Hainsey, Ian Cole. No number one defenseman. You basically have I'd say a group of threes and fours.
Yeah, that's fair.
But the problem is that if you try to mimic that, say the Freddie Anderson's a good goaltender. I think that Crosby and Malkin are probably the two of the five best centers in the league. But Austin Matthews is a great young player. Nazem Kadri is a good center, but you don't have the whole situation does not fit the same way in Pittsburgh that it does in Toronto. No,
and I think the Rangers are a team that's really close to what you're talking about as far as mimicking the Penguins. And you want to match up Lundqvist and Murray, that's fine. If you want to say Murray's better because he's won the Cup, I don't care. But the point is they have a lot of threes and fours on defense other than McDonough, who's a legitimate 2. He's probably not a 1, but he plays a 1 because they don't have a 1. And so where have the Rangers gone as far as beating the Penguins or even getting close to that? They haven't. Now, they don't match up in the center position, and that's what really kills them. Yeah, the Leafs can match up in the center position, but they don't even have the defenders the Rangers do. And we already admitted the Rangers aren't the best defensive core. It's a decent one.
Right. You see, I mean, okay. No, I don't think anybody can match up to what the Penguins have up the middle. 1, 2, Crosby, Malkin.
No.
And then you have Hornquist and Kessel and Gunsel and all the Leafs have a good complement of young forwards, not as much experience as the Penguins do. But the Penguins have those two guys who are on the ice almost every minute of every key game. And then they have Matt Murray, who is 23 years old, and oh my God, he's only won 2 Stanley Cups in his first 2 years. So the situation is not the same.
It's an NHL record, by the way.
Yeah, the situation is not the same where you can get away with a median defense like the Penguins have and win with Toronto because the other sums of the parts are not the same. And I think that carries with a lot of teams. I mean, with the Rangers, Russ, I mean, their strength up the middle is nowhere close to the Penguins. I mean, even Stepan. I mean, I think they would have to trade for John Tavares and maybe even or sign John Tavares, and even then, I don't think they'd be as strong up the middle as the Penguins are.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, and so again, for the announcers, analysts, people that want to think that yes, we could just simply mimic the Pittsburgh Penguins, it's a lot harder than it looks.
Right, and the point that I'm making here is that teams are trying to avoid the prospect of having to go out and spend money in free agency or sacrifice young assets to get defensemen, and that's like where Toronto is, where teams like Buffalo are, to improve their defense to be able to be a more legitimate contender. And I know that there are certain people. Oh, you don't have to go out and trade for Chris Tanev. You don't have to go out and trade for Yarmulson or whoever. Yeah, you do, because your defense is not good enough.
Yeah, I mean that's plain and simple. I mean, and you look at it, you say, all right, look, this year if the cap goes flat too, it is going to limit what teams can pick up at free agency, and if that's the case, then there's going to be even more wheeling and dealing with Vegas, because if they do sense that the cap will be flat, teams are going to have to make maneuvers just to get another new player this year, because they're going to be close to the cap and they might not be able to buy somebody out, and they might want Vegas to take somebody. And so all of that's going to come into play, all of it. And so I don't even know if the Pittsburgh Penguins can mimic the Pittsburgh Penguins, because they're already losing Marc-Andre Fleury, and Marc-Andre Fleury got him here this year. He did. Without Marc-Andre Fleury, they wouldn't have won the Stanley Cup, regardless of what Matt Murray did or not. So next year, their dynamic changes anyhow.
Well, okay, shifting to the story of the last 24 hours, and, it's not fully revealed right now. There are some situations where it's unclear whether a team had asked a player to waive the no movement clause, or the agent hasn't confirmed, or whatever. I mean, but one for sure, and one that I think could have some negative ramifications, is Dion Phaneuf was asked by the Ottawa Senators to waive the no movement clause, and he apparently has refused. And that puts the Ottawa Senators in a precarious situation, because they have Phaneuf with the no move, they have Carlson, and that means exposing either Mark Mathot or Cody Ceci, two of their valuable top four in the expansion draft. And if all things being equal, if there's no side deal being made, they're going to lose either Mathot or Ceci, whoever they expose. I can say, Russ, that Dion Phaneuf was not a popular figure in Toronto when he was traded. This will make him not a very popular figure in Ottawa if Ottawa has to lose Ceci or Mathot, who are a key component of them getting to the conference final, because Dion Phaneuf doesn't want to waive his no move.
Yeah, I mean, look, the PC answer is it's his right, and it is, and he has that right. But he also could be a better teammate by hoping that, hey, Ottawa's just doing this so they can save another guy, and you're not going to get picked because your salary's too high. Right. But he doesn't want to risk it. That's his right. But he is also going to risk having blowback in that area via the media and potentially teammates. That's just the way it is. If they all of a sudden, if he walks into that room in September and they've lost, let's say, Ceci, and they haven't been able to make any big deals, and players feel that it's weaker, players are going to look at him and know that he weakened the team. I mean, this is part of the economics of the game now that has sort of crossed into the ice, what happens on the ice. And it's amazing that, hockey hasn't really turned into a bean counting world, but it's getting there. And that's the scary part, is now you've got players with contracts that could literally run your club. Marc-Andre Fleury did not do that. Dion Phaneuf looks like he might be doing it. We don't know for sure yet. He could change his mind. He has until Friday, I think. Yeah,
I believe so. And see, this is the situation. I mean, we know that Ottawa has a very good young defenseman in Thomas Chabot.
Yep.
He's probably going to make the NHL next season.
Real good chance.
Yep. Real good chance. His skill set is more of a top four skill set, but at I think 19 or 20 years old, they may not be anxious to put him into a top four spot right away. So it would be beneficial to them to have him on the bottom pairing and, sort of get used to the NHL and not have a whole ton of minutes being piled on him. So they want to keep four defensemen, and Ceci's under control. Mathot's under control. They're all under control. Like, they all have years left in their contract. So I would hope that Pierre Dorion was given a heads up by Phaneuf and his agent that they were not going to waive the no move, weeks or months ago. Because if this has just sort of been dropped on him at the 11th hour, then Dorion in the next 2 or 3 days has to find a landing spot for Ceci and Mathot. And more than likely, he's going to get pennies on the dollar and not full value for those guys.
Yeah, no doubt. And there'll be people lining up, teams lining up for Ceci. Really good player. He's not a dynamic offensive player, but he's a big kid who skates well, who does put up points, who can lay the occasional physical hit, somebody's going to want him.
Yeah. Well, other situation that is a little cloudy right now is with the Anaheim Ducks. Now, okay, right now, Kevin Bieksa has not – the reports are that Kevin Bieksa has not been asked to waive his no move.
Right.
Now, their situation is if they don't ask him to waive the no move, he has to be protected along with more than likely Hampus Lindholm and Cam Fowler, who they're apparently intending to sign to an extension after July the 1st. The problem here is it exposes two defensemen. It exposes Vatanen and it exposes Josh Manson. Reports, I can't remember whether it was Pierre LeBrun or Bob McKenzie, but one of them indicated that there is a deal in place between Anaheim and Vegas that would provide Vegas something and that would protect one of those defensemen. Now, the thing is,
they'll probably get like Nick Kurdiles or someone good like that.
How about Kasha? How about Nick Ritchie? I mean,
Nick Ritchie, no, that's too high. They won't.
The thing is, Russ, if you're talking about protecting valuable commodities like your defense, and you're talking about protecting, they love Manson apparently. Well, okay, then you're gonna have to pay.
Know, but they won't get Nick Ritchie, but they might get Kurdiles, who definitely could play for them next year. He's already started to play for Anaheim, and he could be a player they have for 10 years. Nick Ritchie, they're not getting. That would give up any hope they have of winning the Stanley Cup if they lose Ritchie. They're already thin offensively anyhow, and Ritchie did add a lot to the team this year. So, no, they're not getting him.
Okay, maybe not Nick Ritchie, but you could be talking about a top prospect like a Sam Steele or a Kasha or some of
that's possible.
You're going to have to make it worth Vegas's while to ignore a defenseman who's 25 years old like Manson, who they clearly like. But all that being said, that's not going to stop Bob Murray from trading Vatanen, because the motivation with Vatanen is not just the expansion draft, it's the cap hit.
Yeah.
It's the fact that they have to clear $5 million in cap space that they're paying the Vatanen right now to be able to pay Fowler. So I'm not sure if that means that the Vatanen deal, if there is one, happens before June 21st or happens after the draft.
I got to tell you, easiest job right now in the NHL, being the owner, sitting back. Hardest job in the NHL, being the capologist right now. You're the guy who everybody's talking to. You're the guy who's under all the pressure. This is like a really – think about it, if you're the capologist, right? And your GM's calling you like probably every 10 minutes, if you're not already in his office, going through everything every minute, trying to figure out all these scenarios. Like, these guys are really earning their money, and we're coming down to the wire now, but it's weird because it's almost like we've had all year to do it. But coming down to the wire, it just seems like it's getting a little chaotic for teams.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's the thing.
Cap things hitting at the same time. That may be why.
Well, yeah, and I don't know how. I mean, it's tough to really plan for that. I mean, imagine, general managers, say like Mark Bergevin or Jason Botterill, they're only worried about their own team. Imagine being Vegas. Imagine being George McPhee and Kelly McCrimmon.
Yeah.
And having to worry about all 30 other teams tracking who's going to be available, who's not going to be available, what deal is going to be made, what deal.
I imagine they've got a whiteboard or a board, and that's how they're tracking it.
Yeah, I mean, but I don't put a lot of stock into this. They're going to have 6 goalies. I
do because they're assets, and they could be traded, and they could loan them to other teams if they have too many. I do. I think if I'm them, I want to control the goalie market, the free agent goalie market. Other than Steve Mason, I would control it then.
I see. The thing is, it's not a very strong market. So I don't think
it is, because let's say the Rangers can't come to a deal for Ronta. They don't protect Ronta. You don't think teams want anti-Ronta? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Teams would be lining up for him. He's the best backup goalie in the league. I don't know if you can name a better one other than Marc-Andre Fleury, who's not really a backup. If you take away Fleury and you just talk about a pure backup, Ronta's like your best one. He's got tremendous worth. And that's one guy.
Well, one interesting thing that's popped up is, and I'll use this pejorative term, even though teams are going to be bribing Vegas to take players that they don't particularly want on their roster anymore.
Right.
And as an example, there are reports that the Columbus Blue Jackets are going to give Vegas their 2017 first round pick so that Vegas will take the contract of David Clarkson off of their books.
Right.
Now remember, Clarkson was acquired by Columbus in the Nathan Horton deal, and the reason that they made that deal is because Nathan Horton didn't have insurance on his contract. Clarkson did. Clarkson potentially could have played for them. He was still healthy at that point, but he's had a series of debilitating injuries that have made it unable for him to play. Same with Horton. Horton has never played a game with Toronto. If Clarkson goes to Vegas, he would essentially count towards the cap floor, but they would be getting insurance money to pay them back. So it would basically be a cap filler without costing them anything. And they would get the benefit of a first-round pick to bring in a young prospect. Whereas Columbus, they're a budget team, Russ, and I think because they had such success last year, they're hoping that $5 million can be a player or two that can get them past Pittsburgh in the first round next year.
Yeah, no doubt. Pittsburgh, if you think about it, they've got it the easiest in this expansion draft. They already knew, apparently back in February, what was going to happen, so they're not sweating anything. They've got it the easiest, but there's a lot of other teams that don't. And right now, like, again, the next biggest thing that we've been talking about and not talking about is teams not contacting, like, these big-time players to ask them if they'll waive their no-move, no-trades, right? Like, so the Rangers didn't ask Stahl and Girardi. Still doesn't mean they won't buy him out. But now there's this sort of thing going around where, well, we don't want to ask them. We don't want to upset these guys. Like, listen, these guys are not fragile. They know it's a business. They know when they sign these contracts, things come up. They know that this is a possibility. They knew Vegas was getting the team. Like, I don't know why the media is acting like all of a sudden these guys could be crushed. And,
right.
If you ask them. Like, I just think it's a ridiculous notion.
Well, the first thing that popped into my head regarding Bieksa, because they said the agent wasn't talking, the player wasn't talking, there was sort of mum's the word in that situation, was not that he didn't waive it, was the fact that he's getting bought out. Because remember, he's 36 years old. He had a good, he still can play. He makes $4 million. And if they buy him out, then if they trade Vatanen, if they trade Vatanen, they can protect Manson, and then they have the three defensemen. So it would work out that way. But if they have the thing is the deal. If they have a deal with Vegas, that protects them from everything. So that they could take a Simone Dupré or a Clayton Stoner as the waiver, as the expansion draft guy, and that would work for them. Yeah,
I'll tell you the best day of the year, and that really should be the biggest media day of the year, will be the day that the Las Vegas training camp opens. Day one of that camp. I want to see who walks in that door. I want to see who's actually going to play, who's getting on the ice, who isn't getting on the ice, because I think even some of those guys who have canceled contracts probably have to show up day one, right, just to sort of make an appearance. And so that would be the great day, because even Chris Pronger had to show up once a year to Philly, right? And so we see him. That'll be the day.
This is the thing that could be a complete sideshow, is that if say for example, the team that they draft in the expansion draft and the team that steps on the ice in October, if they're completely different, then what's going to happen on June 21st when they introduce these players at the NHL awards? It's like, ladies and gentlemen, Marc-Andre Fleury, and then Marc-Andre Fleury's traded to Calgary?
Right.
I mean, okay, so what was this big presentation for? You just introduced a bunch of players who aren't on the team. So how does that strike you in terms of promoting that team?
That's something that could happen. I'll also tell you, from the cards and collectibles business, things are going to be in flux, because normally they would be like, updates and such, and you'd have to have photography in before the season begins, obviously, to get the first series out. And so they're going to want to have that Vegas photography in kind of early, right? But if Marc-Andre Fleury goes in the expansion draft to Vegas, he's probably getting a Vegas card. It doesn't mean he'll even play for Vegas. It could be like Eli Manning and the Chargers. But if I'm the collectibles company, I'm making that Fleury Vegas card and I'll short print it. I don't care because it'll be collectible. Now, if he goes to, let's say, Calgary before the season begins, then it'll be that either they'll rush it into that first series or they'll be in that next series of Upper Deck Series 1 hockey, as an example, where they get in that card. But that's going to be a fun thing too for fans, because I want that Fleury Vegas card if there is one. Me personally, I would take it.
Another interesting situation is Montreal, because I in doing some research for just on the expansion draft. If you look at Montreal right now, there's a contract that I think that they'd be dying to get rid of, and that's Thomas Plekanec's deal. Now, right now, if they don't trade Galchenyuk before the expansion draft, they would have to make a decision on either protecting Plekanec, who's got another year of $6 million, or exposing a guy like Charles Hudon, who's 22 years old, who scored over 25 goals 2 times the last 2 years with St. John's in the AHL. Good young player with some future potential.
Who's not St. John's anymore?
No, they moved to, I think,
Laval.
They moved to Laval, but the last 2 years it was St. John's.
They're upgrading that arena as we speak. Just so you know, that's an update.
Yeah, and a lot of changes in the AHL. I think somebody's moving to Belleville, so there's a
the Binghamton's moving to Belleville, so that's
Albany's moving to Binghamton. So there's a lot of musical chairs going on. Yep. But the whole point here is that Montreal, because Montreal needs to add offense. I think that the realization is finally there after many years of certain people out there, I don't know who, saying that they need to add offense. They think they finally realize that they need to do so, and that $6 million would be cap space that they could spend on adding a scoring winger or a scoring forward or two. So they might be in a position where they would have to, quote, bribe Vegas to take on Plekanec's deal, and it would benefit Vegas because he's only got a year left. They need to get to the cap floor. So, but the question is, how much will that cost? Will it cost a first-round pick? Will it cost like a former first, like a Michael McCarron or Noah Juleson or somebody like that? I mean, it might be costly.
It could cost a McCarron, but I would do it because they still haven't found a spot for McCarron. Certainly in Vegas, there'll be a spot, and it does clear up that money. And it is only 1 year, so that's not a big deal to be stuck with. If I'm Montreal, I'm trying to do that.
Now, the other thing that's coming with Montreal is the consistent talk is that they're going to move Nathan Beaulieu. And, right now they have, if you look at their defensive depth, I mean, Jeff Petrie got a no-move clause on the new contract that he signed.
Which is crazy. That's just
it is crazy, but I think honestly, the money that they're paying him, $5.5 million. He's a good defenseman. He's not worth that.
I don't think Dan Petrie ever got a no move, and he probably won 15 games in the majors, right?
The World Series in 1984, but no, but they have to protect Weber, obviously. They have to protect Petrie. They have to because of the no-move clause. And then it's a question of whether you protect Beaulieu or Alexei Emelin. And with all the rumors out there about them shopping Beaulieu, that makes the assumption that they're protecting Emelin. So, honestly, if I'm a team out there that needs a defenseman, he's 24 or 25 years old. I think he's got a pretty good skill set. I would go after Nathan Beaulieu in a second.
Yeah, I would too. Just an update on Dan Petrie. He was 19 wins. 15 wins, 19 wins, and 18 wins are his highs. But he had like 5 double-digit win seasons, 6 double-digit win seasons in a row. So
we're talking baseball here, and we're boring at.
I would give him a no move before Jeff. That's just me.
Okay, Ak, we can't hear you.
We can't hear you, Ak.
Log off and log back on.
Okay. So,
but
Beaulieu is going to be a loss. I mean, but look. Do I think Montreal has more defense than they used to? Yes.
You hear me now?
Yep, we can hear you now.
But I still don't know if that's a recoverable move. Like that's
okay.
If they're doing it, they're going to regret it.
Go ahead.
Hello, guys. I'm really sorry today, everyone out there. It's I can't remember honestly. I mean, you guys are talking about rumors right, since the beginning of the show. I'm sure.
We tried not to because.
No, you have to. I mean, honestly, there's too much. We could talk all day. It's just there's too much going on, and it's I just don't have the luxury of the other people out there. Like never understood how the Dregers and the McKenzie of the world could be on television and also talk to people at the same time. I can't do it. I'm not capable of it. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being late. I'm going to jump on it and try to jump in as best as I can.
Okay.
To what you're doing, and I don't even know if I'm talking. If all I've talked about, I can talk about as much as I can, but I will talk about as much as I possibly can here.
Go ahead.
And so, what have you guys? You guys have obviously touched on
Phaneuf, Bieksa.
Keith Yandel.
No, not Keith. Not Keith Yandel.
Yeah. So there was a lot of talk that Keith Yandel was going to be asked to make his movement clause. I've checked into that, and the first reaction I got was no, that he's not going to be asked to move that, and that was just a fake rumor or false or fake news. But false rumor, whatever you want to call it. And but now there's a little bit of debate as to whether or not that happened or not. There's definitely there's so many side deals going on right now. It's insane. I mean, I've heard that Talbot has talked to the Rangers. Now we know the Rangers haven't. I mean, Talon has talked to McPhee. McPhee has talked to the Rangers about a deal together, the three of them. So you have New York, Florida, and Vegas talking a deal. I'm working on that one for a while, and that's a pretty big deal apparently. So even though we look at some of these players who haven't been asked to maybe move their no movement clauses for the sake of what they have to move for now, like to be left unprotected or what have you, what has to happen now, or make a trade, that doesn't mean that they aren't going to be moved still. So I don't think you can sit back and say Girardi and Stahl are definitely safe in New York, even though everyone's saying that they haven't been asked to move their no movement clause yet. That I do really believe is true, and I think that there can come a point here where, you know, they can always be traded if they want to trade them. You know, they can if they say they work out a deal. I mean, a lot of players are being very reluctant to do what I believe that Marc-Andre Fleury has done, which is accept to go to Vegas and then accept he's going to be with someplace else. There are a lot of players that are being asked to do that. That's the common thing that I'm hearing out there.
Well, okay.
Not that they're going right to Vegas, but that they are going to Vegas, but they're going through Vegas to somewhere.
Right.
And players aren't trusting that completely. You know,
well, I'll give you a comparable. I mean, it did happen in baseball with Mike Piazza. Mike Piazza got traded to the Florida Marlins. He was on the Marlins for like a week. He played one game there. Now, these guys won't even play a game, but he was in Florida for a week. And then after that week, he got traded to the New York Mets, and it happened. I think the players have to trust the GMs that this will happen, and the players are probably listening to their agents saying, well, I bargained this for you, so you don't have to trust them. And that's probably where their button is.
Well, you're right about that, Russ. That's very astute. And you know what else is going on with that is it's not necessarily a trust issue the agent says, so you go to the agent, you say, I want him to waive his no trade clause. Let's just throw out a name like Yandel. I want Yandel to waive his no trade clause, even though I haven't heard that he has been asked that yet, but just using him as an example. So Yandel's agent says, okay, we'll consider doing that, knowing that Yandel's probably okay doing that. But but what are we getting out of this? You know, you're going to go to this place, you're going to go to that place. Well, I need a little bit more than that. I need an insurance that there's going to be another, you know, something thrown onto my contract, or I'm going to be able to know that I'm going to be able to re-sign, or some there. You know, everyone wants something for something. No one wants to just give up something for nothing. And what's happening now is there's the one thing of the teams working out deals with McPhee in Vegas, and there's the other thing of the teams working out deals with the agents to work out deals with McPhee. And there's agents who are working directly with McPhee too. That's also happening a lot. Where you're not seeing, you know, where teams aren't involved at all, but agents are talking to McPhee and going back to the team and saying, you know, he's interested in this guy. You can probably save the guy or try to protect a different way. So there's all these different things happening and colliding at the same time. It's really a big cluster, something or another. But you know, they'll figure it out. But it is fascinating, and literally my brain is going to explode soon. So I'm trying my best to, not to mention the fact that a 11-hour trip from Anaheim because of an accident on Route 81 took 16 and a half hours, and I got in at 5 in the morning. So, you know, we're throwing all that on top of it. So my head is exploding right now.
Well,
So I'm just saying there's more to this than what is leaking out. Like when you hear Dre say, Phaneuf's not going to waive his no trade clause. I think I said that, right? You said it. Did Drager say that, or McKenzie or something?
Yeah, everybody has said it basically.
But he has to Friday, right?
And that's
he change his mind.
That's right. That's the general mood right now,
Yes.
right? For this part, because the deadline here that's coming up, where it has passed, even the deadline is so confusing. You guys know what the deadline is?
The deadline was for the teams to ask the player.
Right. That was 5 o'clock yesterday.
Right. It was 5 o'clock yesterday, and that though is such a bizarre deadline because it's not like they can't ask now as well. It's not like it does. They can't ask in terms of what you're trying to do for leaving a guy.
I guess they can't formally ask. They can't send paperwork or whatever you have to do. That's what they can't do.
Well,
right,
see,
until after the expansion draft, right? So I mean, but it happens. But but after the expansion draft, anything's open wide open again.
This is why there might be some hesitancy from certain players regarding this waiving of the no move clause. A player in the last 2 years was asked to waive his no trade in a deal by the opposing general manager on the promise that he was going to be allowed to play fully for the team he was being traded to. He waived the no trade clause. He got traded. He got injured at the end of the year. The next year, he went to training camp. He played 5 games. He got sent to the minors, and he never played for the team again. So, right. I mean, that's the thing. It's like you can drop that protection and you can be trusting, and maybe it works out for you. But there's nothing to prevent things from going a different direction. And that giving assurances are all fine and good, but that doesn't stop somebody from breaking them. So that's why. I mean, in the situation of Phaneuf, I mean, I think if this situation has come up just in the last 48 hours where Pierre Dorion asked Phaneuf to waive the no move clause, and Phaneuf has made it clear only in the last 48 hours that he was going to say no. He really is putting the screws to the Ottawa Senators because they've got Cody Ceci or Mark Mathot that they're going to lose in the expansion draft because Phaneuf won't waive the no move. And I would seriously doubt that McPhee is going to take a 32-year-old Dion Phaneuf making $7 million for another 4 years.
Right. I mean, it's impossible to move anyway. That was what was kind of strange, but they just didn't want to have to protect him. The idea was that, if they go to Phaneuf and say, okay, we're not going to protect you. Just give us the ability not to protect you, so we can make your team better because no one else is going to take you. I mean, so that's why they're a little pissed off at Phaneuf, because they're saying.
In Phaneuf's mind, he thinks he will be taken. That's what you.
Yeah, you think because Phaneuf, does. Right. Phaneuf does he's a big defenseman with a pretty good season, and he's thinking he's a good, solid guy, and he's good.
But if Phaneuf's action stands and he waives the no, and he doesn't waive the no move, then a deal to protect players between Ottawa and Vegas just got that much more expensive for Pierre Dorion because now he risks losing Ceci or Mathot, and say you could have given up a second-round pick to protect whoever you wanted to protect if Phaneuf had waived the no move. Now the price has gone up to a first-round pick or to somebody like Colin White or somebody like that.
Now I really start to believe more of I always thought that Phaneuf was the backup plan, actually, and that the Bobby Ryan deal was the real plan, and I heard that from very good sources. And so now the Bobby Ryan plan becomes even more probable because they could sit there and they could just say, okay, we'll give you a first-round pick, you take Bobby Ryan, and we call it a day. I really feel, Bobby Ryan was funny. He was talking and said, I heard him say something, no one's going to take my contract or something like that.
Right.
He's wrong about that. And in this situation, and Bobby Ryan,
I think he's saying that in hopes that that's true. But yes, you're right.
Yeah. Because I don't know, why wouldn't you? I mean, if you're the Knights, why don't you take Bobby Ryan? Because he is at least he's a marketable player. He's a second overall pick, and he's had a seriously good year.
And you got to reach the cap floor. I mean,
you got to reach the cap floor, right? All that's very true. So.
Well, one, and this was floated yesterday, and I don't know if you've heard anything about this, but it's been reported that the Blue Jackets are going to potentially trade their first-round pick to get Vegas to take David Clarkson's contract off their hands. And if that's the case, that's basically free money for Vegas because Clarkson's contract is covered under insurance. It's a $5.25 million cap hit, but they get the money back in insurance because he's injured.
Now, didn't we see a story, though, Mike, where McPhee said he wasn't going to do any deals like that?
Well, I mean, it's very possible that he said that, but I don't know how long ago that was. But honestly, if you're getting a first-round pick, I think he changes your opinion pretty quickly.
Yeah. It does. Now the whole couple other things. James Neal being in play is another thing that's starting to come up, and that's from people speculating that the Predators are going to keep 8 players, and go that route because they have more defense than they want to protect.
Well, Pete Weber said when we had him on the show a few weeks ago that they were going to protect 8 because they would risk losing Ellis or Ekholm, whoever if it went 7-3-1. And honestly, if you lose Colin Wilson, I mean, no offense to Colin Wilson,
what if you lose James Neal? That's the issue right now.
Well, James Neal has a year left in his contract, so it's sort of a similar situation with Nashville that Toronto has with James Van Riemsdyk. It's like a scorer, a legitimate scorer, a veteran guy, not too old, who can still put the puck in the net. But
you got to make a trade because you can't lose him for nothing in the expansion draft.
Right.
So you turn around and that's what's happening, right? So you look at that. And
now Van Riemsdyk wouldn't be part of an expansion draft, but it's that getting something for somebody before his contract is out. And that might be what's going on with Neal.
Here's the quote from McPhee from the Las Vegas Sun. McPhee basically said on May 31st, from my experience at Washington, one of the keys to that team being so successful was not making bad contracts and getting locked into long-term deals. No deal is better than a bad deal. Being able to walk away from those deals during negotiations is important. So I think we all sort of got from that he may not take a cap-swallowing deal because he wants to keep the cap pretty clear so that he can make the right moves when he wants to make them.
Yeah, I mean, granted, but
go
ahead. Sorry.
No, I mean, I think that, one I take out of that is the first thing you said in the first sentence that was said on May 31st, which is in GM terms is like 3 years ago, because of all the things that are happening right now with McPhee and all the things he's facing right now. That doesn't. I think McPhee is doing financially by saying something like that. He makes it harder for a team. He's trying to make it so it's not that easy. Like he'll take Clarkson, but it's got to be significant. So he's not just going to take him. It's not just going to be something he's going to do for the hell of it.
That makes sense.
So, so he's going to make that. He's going to make it sound like it's not something he needs to do. Now I did just get something that the text that that when we talk about Bieksa, and I talked about Bieksa before that they were not going to ask him to waive his no trade clause. I've been saying that the whole time because they went out of their way with Bieksa to tell him that they wouldn't do that before, and if they did that, that would really be, it would really just go against, it would really hurt them as far as the league players, because everyone knows that Bieksa is like, I'm moving my family someplace, or I want to be stable, and I'm going there, and I'm only going to come to you if you promise not to do this to me. So this is something that we made very, very clear. However, I do hear that there's already a deal in place between Anaheim and Vegas that they're not, so that's not going to require them to have to ask Bieksa to waive his no trade clause. So, or no movement clause. So whatever that is, I don't know exactly what that is, but Anaheim's giving Vegas something to not take somebody that they're leaving unprotected. Essentially, is what's happening. So there's going to be a major player left unprotected that Vegas won't take because Anaheim gives them something else. That's how that's
okay.
How
You know what that tells me? That tells me Anaheim is protecting 8, and that they're exposing Silfverberg. That's what it tells me.
Could be.
Because then if they go 7-3-1, they're protecting Silfverberg, but they're not protecting one of their defensemen, and it puts them in a situation where they're going to have to trade somebody and under the gun trade somebody. If they protect 8 skaters and they don't ask Bieksa to waive, that means they're protecting Bieksa, Manson, Lindholm, and Fowler, and trading Vatanen, which they're going to do anyway because they need to clear the cap space to sign Fowler anyway. So I think they're making a deal here to protect Silfverberg, and they're going to protect 8 skaters.
Here's the funny thing. We're talking about teams losing one player, and we're talking about thousands of other things that go around it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It is insane, Russ. And it's like, and there never before have people been more willing to talk to me. Like never before have I had a situation where I get GMs and agents like that, everyone wanting to talk to me because everyone's trying to find out every possible thing that's going on. And never before have I had more people telling me, I'm going to tell you this off the record, and me hanging up before they continue, which has happened which has happened at least a dozen times now, and they know this. I'm like, listen, I'm not taking anything off the record right now, because if I can find it out otherwise, and you tell me it off the record, then I'm screwed.
Right.
So I'm not going to do that. You don't tell me anything off the record, and they know that. So so I said, and if you're going to tell me something off the record, just hang up the phone and say, or I'll hang up on you, which has happened. And they laugh at me. I get texts back like saying, ha ha ha, if I hang up on them. But it's like, it's the way I have to do things. No, everyone wants to talk to me right now. And because everyone is trying so hard to figure out what the hell is happening here. And I even talked to a really seasoned writer in the right before Game 6 in Nashville, and this is a guy who always has more information than I have, and he's a guy who's been around forever. He's a Canadian, and he comes up to me and says, "You have any idea what's going on?" And it was just one of these moments of like, no. I said, yes and no, right? I know what's being said, but do I know what's going on? No. It's that crazy. It's making for a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And if you're either going to go crazy out of insanity and lose your mind, or you're just going to have fun with it. It's like going on a roller coaster ride. Literally how if you're tense on a roller coaster ride, you'll make yourself sick. But if you just let yourself go, you'll be fine.
Well,
that's what you do.
The team that we've heard little or nothing out of in the last 24 hours, and the one that is sort of like next to Anaheim, the one I think is in the most danger of losing somebody really good, is Minnesota. And I know that there was something out there this morning about them supposedly asking Jason Pominville to waive his no move, and that there was no information out there about whether he said yes or no, or whether it was even done. But they're gonna lose either Brodin or Dumba or one of their defensemen unless they move one of them. So that's a situation that intrigues me.
Yeah, I think Brodin is really in danger. They have been trying, I've heard, to make a side deal to protect Brodin, but I've had no luck so far. And this is the other thing: how many side deals can McPhee make? Think about it. He can make
as many as he wants.
Right.
He can make as many as he wants, but side deals require certain kinds of currency to make them. They're certain kinds of draft picks or this kind of thing. There's only so much of that to go around, and McPhee needs players, right? So he needs to.
That's where the tag of future considerations comes in, because that gives them all a little more time to figure out what it's going to be.
But that's the tag of future considerations. Usually, it means it's usually an either or in most situations, and they still have to figure that out. So it's like. Yeah, you can't just go in and no one's going to say I'm going to give you my car and you'll figure out what you pay for me.
No, but if he has an idea that it's X, Y, or Z, then he will accept you saying future considerations on that day.
Yeah, but will the league?
They have to figure them out.
Will the league accept future considerations? Because there's no.
Yeah, they're going to have to.
Well,
no, but when they actually do ask for what those future considerations are, and because they have this whole thing, if it's not a hockey deal, quote unquote, and that's the biggest issue right now. I feel like that has gone out the window right now because, that used to be when I first started doing this, in seriousness, 12 years ago. There were deals that did not happen. One being Le Cavalier to Montreal, because it wasn't a quote unquote hockey deal.
Well, what's a hockey deal? Would that be like trading Michael Jello for Dan Petru on this show? Is that considered like a hockey deal? Is that
that's highway robbery? That's what that is.
And Petru's like an all-star. So you're trading an all-star with a big contract for Mike, who doesn't have any contract at all. You're talking about that.
I'm signing off.
Oh man, yeah, a hockey deal, Mike. We love you. Come back. A hockey deal is technically something that makes sense on the ice, that you can justify. Like Bobby Ryan and a first-round draft pick for a future fourth-round draft pick is not a hockey deal.
No, but what people don't realize is that the NHL has become the NBA. It's become trading.
We knew that was happening. We knew that was happening.
And that's because salary caps force that. So. And that's why when I first started doing this.
Do they have a computer similar to the NHL 17 GM mode? Right. They pump in this deal and see if it.
Yeah, I want to know that because I honestly think it's Colin Campbell, in his room, all grumpy, and he's like, "It's not a hockey deal. Forget it.
Give me a cigar."
Yeah. You don't know what you're talking about. That doesn't make any hockey sense. That's my theory on it. I don't know.
Caesar. So it's like hockey deal, no hockey deal.
Yeah, it's Colin Campbell and Chris Pronger,
Okay.
you know, like sitting there across the table from each other. Say, does that make any sense from a hockey perspective? Nope. So, you know, but you couldn't make deals. Like, it had affected things. Now that is, I have not heard the term hockey deal in like 3 years.
Right.
And I brought it up to like somebody today at the NHL because I said, these rumors I'm hearing are not hockey deals. Like, there's no way these are hockey deals.
Well, no,
like,
the last, okay, you want to know the last time we heard the term hockey deal? Was around this time last year when it was Shea Weber for PK Subban, or when it was Taylor Hall for Adam Larson.
No. I mean, those were hockey deals.
Yeah.
But the last time we heard hockey deal really significantly was probably Le Cavier in Montreal, because that was a really one-sided trade. The hockey deal comes up when the NHL thinks it's a one-sided trade. Like if they say that team is getting all these assets and this team is getting nothing, but now because of the salary cap, you take that other ambiguous asset. Like a hockey deal used to mean the equal amount of possible talent, not just like, okay, cap space, which equates to future talent. And so I think that's how they're justifying not using the term hockey deal anymore. They're saying, okay, moving Bobby Ryan is going to give you somebody down the line for the amount of money that you paid Bobby Ryan, so you can make that as a hocky deal. But it's not really a hockey deal.
If that's the definition, then the Dion Phaneuf deal that Toronto and Ottawa made is a hockey deal, because all Toronto did was Toronto took on $9 million in cap space for the following year just to dump Dion Phaneuf's contract for seven years times 5 years.
That's a perfect example. And I remember when that deal happened, thinking like, okay, well, this is definitely the concept of hockey deal is dead. Like, there's no way no way you're getting equal players here.
Yeah, no.
Necessarily, but you're getting relief cap wise, right?
Yeah.
So that's like,
well,
and that matters in the salary cap era. So okay, so let's throw hockey deal out the window. But at the same time, what happens when you don't have hockey deals? You do end up, like you said, with the NBA, because you do end up with, you know, just contracts being traded and not necessarily and teams and you really risk of certain teams, just the rich getting richer sort of. You really risk that, and I think that you know could come to fruition through this time around. I mean, a lot of people are bringing up the fact that, you know, Nashville, here's a team that, you know, completely, you know, didn't spend a lot of money. They weren't at the, you know, and they managed to win without you know, spending a lot of money. That doesn't happen very often, as we know. So it's rare that you see a team that's in the bottom. I mean, I don't know where the Predators were this year. I guess they were probably in the middle, probably because Subban definitely affected them contract-wise, but
sure.
Yeah,
it was only $1 million more than what Weber was making, so not really.
Yeah, right. But it used to be. Remember, the Predators were like just above the floors in cap space.
Right.
So, yeah. So there's a lot of that now. You know, and it's funny we bring this up now because I was talking to somebody about this at Game 6, and when I was going back and reviewing the 10 years ago when I went to Nashville thing, I looked at that article, and in that article, I talked about the fact that at that time, do you know, here's something that's funny that you'll never probably put in perspective together. When I was in Nashville 10 years ago, Vanek had just been tendered an offer sheet. That was the same period of time. So, like, because there's a story right before that of Vanek being tendered this offer sheet by Edmonton, away from Buffalo, right? And then it took until I got back to decide whether or not they were going to match it, right? So I never would put those concepts together at the same time.
Well,
but they were.
I'll tell you something even bigger than that, Ak. When I was in Nashville 14 years ago, a waitress at the Waffle House told us country crock was butter.
There you go. Country crock is not butter.
We asked for butter. She gave us country crock.
I can't believe it's not butter.
Yesterday, driving back in Virginia, I stopped at a place called the Huddle House. Okay, now the
Huddle House. I've seen the Huddle House.
The Huddle House is a step down from the Waffle House, which is a step down from Denny's, which is really getting low.
When the Waffle House gets condemned, the Huddle House moves in and buys it.
Yeah, the Huddle House is totally. I mean, they're a little bit cleaner than Waffle Houses, maybe, but they're newer. Does
that mean that they make Eggo waffles?
Yeah, right. The Huddle. Yeah, what is Huddle? You know, it's funny. So anyway, that was as an aside. So they do come and go gas stations in the South, which I always hated. But that's another story for another day. Where were we? Yeah, so so where we are now, I keep hearing these Marc-Andre Fleury to Philadelphia rumors, and I have to tell you that I think there's something to them. I really do. I think that this is because if this is happening, if Pittsburgh is moving him out there and Vegas is moving him back to the East, where in the East would they be moving him? I mean, really, where in the East besides Philadelphia would make any sense?
Buffalo. Buffalo.
Yeah, Buffalo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Buffalo likes everything Pittsburgh.
Yep.
That's true. It's a good point.
Buffalo
Maybe.
is at a crossroads with Robin Leonard. He's an RFA. I think they're probably going to need at least a couple years of solid goaltending before the kid that they just signed, Johansson, their third-round pick from a couple years ago, may be ready for the NHL. So that's a possibility that I could throw out there.
Not bad. I haven't heard that, but I'll look into it as a possibility. I mean, but I've heard the Philadelphia possibility for sure. I think
Philly at this point, to be honest, with just the negotiations for Jordan Wheel taking this long, which is extraordinary to me.
Which is extraordinary, yes. You're right.
I just think they're sitting with Neuwirth. I don't think they're getting a goalie. I think that's it. I think Neuwirth is their goalie, and then it's a matter of if they lose Stellaris, then they have to go and get a backup. I think everybody is overplaying that. I
mean, honestly, if Fleury does not end up in Calgary, I don't know where he ends up, because they really have nothing. John Gillies is not ready. They're not going to re-sign Elliott. They're not going to re-sign Chad.
They like Steve Mason in Calgary. I know that.
Yeah, I mean, if they're going to go with Mason, that's a good plan B, because I think he could handle it. But
yeah, I mean, that's who they like.
Elliott, I'll say that.
Yeah. I mean, and that's I don't think the Flyers. The Flyers at one point were looking at Elliott. I don't think they are anymore. So maybe either you're right, Russ, or I'm right. Like either they are just decided that they're not going to go for anybody else and just going to go Neuwirth, or they are going to go for it and go for Fleury. I don't think there's a middle ground. I think that
I don't think there's a middle ground either. I'll agree with you on that.
Would either one of you think that the New York Islanders are a possibility? Thomas Greiss and Halak?
I don't think so, because they gave Greiss a long-term deal.
Yeah.
And Halak, they still have to pay too. They're probably going to try and lose Halak's contract.
Doug Weight really likes Greiss. He really thinks, and there's good reason to like Greiss. I mean, he is in his moments, but Doug Weight, I think he's his guy right now.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't think that there's going to be a change there. All right, here's one. As much as we like Craig Anderson, if they could get Marc-Andre Fleury, if they felt like that's maybe the next step to becoming a Stanley Cup team, would they hesitate in doing that? I'd have to think Ottawa would have to consider it.
Because Anderson's, 36 years old?
Yeah.
Fleury's a few years younger. They really don't have a future goaltender in the organization right now. I mean, Andrew Hammond was a one-year flash. I mean, they could re-sign Condon, and Condon's relatively young, but he filled in adequately, but I don't think he's a number one.
He's a definite number two.
He's a really good number two.
He's a really good number two, and there's nothing wrong with him as your number two. But that's not a bad idea. Although I think that,
it's a big upgrade. As much as Craig Anderson had the year of his life, there is going to be another year where we look at Craig Anderson and say he's back to being that guy again too.
Perhaps. I think right now, I just think that he had such a good year that it's going to be a hard thing for them to sell.
If they got Marc-Andre Fleury, I think they could forget about it, because again, he did just win a Stanley Cup. He did literally get his team there. I don't think anybody in the world would be sad because they got Fleury instead of Craig Anderson.
Yeah, and who likes Craig Anderson too, and I know this from talking to him before, is Hextall. That could open up the ideas there.
That could open up something for them if that were to happen. But I'm just looking at it long term and thinking, that's the only way Ottawa really gets into a Stanley Cup run better than last year. Otherwise, I don't see how they're going to reproduce last year. Yeah,
I agree. It's really hard. He's got to come up incredible again, and they've got to get everything to work right for them. It was interesting. I did hear that Carlson, and I was really proud of somebody for doing this, got a Conn Smythe vote.
Yes.
Which really, that's something, and we talked about it before, because I really thought that there was one point at which, after Game 6, I'm like, that guy deserves a Conn Smythe consideration, even if they don't win this Game 7.
I think he deserves it, because if it wasn't for him, they would have finished in 30th.
Yeah. That's where you had them. So, no, that's for sure.
I think in my head, anywhere else that would be an upgrade. Clearly Colorado, but I don't know what they do with Varlamov's contract. So I don't know if McPhee would take Varlamov at the money he's making. So that's something where I could see it happening because McPhee likes Varlamov, but I think something else would have to drop for that to happen. But Colorado would seem like another place.
Yeah. Now, Tobias Engstrom, he's another guy who I've heard mentioned.
Yeah, he's at the end of the rope. I don't know. At this point.
Yeah, they're really being cagey about whether or not they asked him to waive his no movement clause or not.
Like, what's to be cagey? He's 32. He's not played a full season in 4 years. He's down to 14 points a year, 16 points a year. Yes, can he move the puck? Sure, but he's a small defenseman that gets banged up. Like, I'm not even sure he has much market value anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I was just
For a team like Vegas, he could be their number one defenseman, yes.
Right. Well, I was just texted this, okay? This is really interesting. Because I was saying, okay, they're going to – when I said – because we have people out there listening to the show. It's really funny. So I said that somebody I just got off the phone with. I'm like, I got to go to the podcast. Now they're texting me because they're watching the podcast. All right, so he said, don't think for a second that they're not that McPhee is going to make a deal to let the Senators hold on to Methot or Ceci. he's like we sit there and we're saying, okay, now the Senators are going to make a deal so they don't take Methot or Ceci. That's not going to happen.
Well, unless they give up something that Vegas can't refuse. They couldn't refuse.
His point is, and I said what he. Let me text back something. I want to see what he says.
Well, okay. While you're looking,
I think what he means is, listen, there's nothing that you can give me from Vegas that's as good as Methot or Ceci.
Thomas Chabot would make him forget that, but they wouldn't give him that.
Right.
Right.
But what he's actually saying, and this is what you have to think about when you're thinking about anything regarding Vegas. If it's a player like Methot or Ceci who are good right now, the value isn't for them in Vegas. The value is to pick them and flip them and get assets. Because I'm sorry, this team is going to suck this year. It is an expansion.
Oh, I don't know about that with Methot or Ceci.
It's still going to suck. It doesn't.
Yeah,
matter.
but
they might. Okay,
I think to flip Fleury, because there's he's like a Stanley Cup caliber winning goalie, and you don't need a Stanley Cup caliber winning goalie right now, and you can get more for it.
They might keep Ceci because Ceci is young. Yeah. They would flip.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
They would flip Methot.
Yeah.
Because Methot's only got a year left in his contract, and you can't risk keeping him and then saying, well, we want to re-sign him. You flip him now or you flip him at the deadline, but you flip him.
Right.
All right, so I'm going to give you one where if they had to do it, would a team accept Jonathan Dahlin and say, all right, you know what? Yeah, we'll take him and we'll leave those guys alone. And that's a really good prospect. Really good.
Well, no. It couldn't be Jonathan Dahlin because they traded him.
Oh, that's right. They did trade him. So then
it's not going to be it's not going to be Colin White. It's not going to be Chabot.
Then it could be Logan Brown.
Yeah, It could be Logan Brown. Yeah, something like that. And that's a top 15 first round pick from a couple years ago. So that's not.
I thought Dahlin was traded too, but it looks like
he was traded to Vancouver in the Burroughs deal.
Yeah. So they don't even have that updated on Hockey TV.
Let's talk for a second about before we get out of here, because a lot of people are talking about this, and I'm going to put this up as a blog later too, because I think it's interesting. What's the right thing to do when you're asked to waive a no movement clause? Like, this is something that people really have a lot. Like, people have a lot of opinions on this. Players have a lot of opinions. There's players who will tell you, I negotiated the no movement clause. I don't know that they gave it to me. That's part of why I signed here.
We did talk about this earlier.
You did?
Let's hear your opinion, because we already kind of gave.
Okay, cool. So, because I didn't hear your opinion, so
yeah. I'll tell you what it is after, though. I will.
Yeah, please do. So, okay, my opinion is that it's a personal thing with the family and the player. Like, I think what I would do if I was in that situation. So, say I'm the person, and like HockeyBuzz comes to me and they say, we want you to waive your no movement clause to go to go be Puck Daddy's boss, which has happened a couple times. So, all right. So I sit back and I go to my family. I'm like, yeah, bossing around Greg would be a lot of fun. It would be very rewarding. But at the same time, I love HockeyBuzz. It's my baby. I created it from the beginning. Yeah. So, and we love living here, and I don't want to, I don't know where Yahoo lives, where I think they're on Venus, last I heard. So I think
want the rink to be thrown in if I was the GM. But anyhow.
Yeah. Now the rink's like a non-starter. So I would sit back and I would say I would have to talk to my family, because I think that on the one hand, now if I'm a single guy and I don't have a family at all, okay, and someone asks me where my no movement clause, I'm like, fine, I go, because if I'm a single guy, I am, and like knowing the hockey mentality of a lot of guys, they're like, if you don't want me here, I'm not going to be here. That's because they have that feeling of like, you know what, I don't want to be here if you don't want me here. That's what Hartnell did when Philly asked him.
Yeah.
And to go to Columbus, he did not want to go to Columbus at all. He wanted to stay in Philly. He had such a good life here, but he's like, listen, they don't want me here, I'm out of here. So now, but if you have a family involved, you have kids involved that are in schools and stuff like that, I get it. And that's like the exit situation, I get it, because he really, he negotiated that.
I'll tell you, I talked both sides of it at the beginning of the show, but ultimately, I would give the same answer you gave, and that is, yes, I have to go to my family first and see what's going on. My kids may not want to be out of school. My dog may not want to leave his friends. And at the end of the day, if that's the case, then I'm going to have to look like the bad guy and use my, my right and say, no, thank you. I have no interest in that. And then deal with the consequences later if I'm like getting the cold shoulder in the locker room and from the media.
Well, and actually, I think where I'll go with this, because back in 2008.
Yes, I remember.
Yes. The fact that a certain Maple Leafs captain had been paid over $60 million over, I think, a decade from the Maple Leafs, and they hadn't won a Stanley Cup, and they at that point wanted to move him for young assets, Matt Sundin, and he said no. I mean, honestly, they paid you all this money, you didn't deliver, you didn't have a family, you could have lived out of a suitcase for 2 months, and the organization would have benefited from it, and you could have come right back to Toronto if you really wanted to. Yeah. But instead, you invoke your no movement clause. A lot of Leaf fans lost a lot of respect for Matt Sundin because they thought he was selfish, and I sort of echoed that. And now if there are family concerns and things of that nature, and then I completely understand that. But in that realm, in that instance, that was not a part of the thing. So that always colors my opinion of no movement and no trade clauses.
Yeah. Okay. And I remember very well talking about that and arguing with you at the time about it, because I know a lot, because my opinion was Matt Sundin. He negotiated. He signed back in Toronto, and the reason he signed back in Toronto had a large part to do with the fact that they offered him that no movement clause. Otherwise,
my answer always is the GM is the one who negotiated that deal. He didn't have to give that deal.
And the GM who negotiated that was gone.
Right. That's what normally happens.
Yeah,
because quite often, big contracts like that, how many GMs make it 6 to 8 years?
Right.
It happens a lot of times that happens. So yeah, that's not uncommon. I do think that, as a person, now another person, I know I've had this discussion before, and someone brought it to me. Listen, a friend of mine who lives here, who's had to move 5 times, in the last 10 years because of his job, and has had to take his kids all over the place and stuff like that, and it sucks, but they deal with it because it's his job, and that's what he's got to do to make a living and keep things going. You could argue that, if I'm a family person, I'm looking at it going to a situation where I'm going to be better. It's going to be better suited for my game, which is going to make me a better player, which is going to make me be able to sign bigger contracts. It's going to help our family out in the long run too. Maybe that's the other argument you make there for your, because people were not going to be the first, obviously you don't want to move your children around and stuff like that. I had a dad who refused several promotions in the Air Force, so we didn't have to move around very much, because he thought that was more important. So I can appreciate the fact that I didn't have to move around as a kid, and yet I was an Air Force kid, which is rare. So, yeah, I think that it's I think it's a tough call, but I see both sides of it. But I also see that my gut would be, taking family out of it would be like, if you don't want me here, I'm not here. I'm out of here. That would be my gut, taking everything out of it.
I think and just last thing, I think you guys were talking about Tobias Enstrom before.
Yeah.
Apparently he was not asked to waive the no move clause. They're in a situation where they have 4 defensemen to protect, and they have too many forwards that they have to protect. So more than likely they're going to go 7-3-1. To me, that increases the possibility, probably not of a Trouba deal, because we've been over that terrain too many times. But there was talk last month about maybe Tyler Myers being moved. that could be a plan B for a team out there who's looking to get a Tanev or looking to get a Vatanen or whoever is out there in terms of defensemen. Tyler Myers missed all last year with hip problems, supposedly will be ready to play next year. He's got 2 years left, making a little over $5 million. And if he's back healthy, he's a good defenseman. So that might be something, some direction that other teams that are looking for defensemen may go.
All right.
All right, got a great scoop for you, and it just came out in via text here. I got to look into it more, of course, but it's gonna be interesting.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to see if I can say this, and I can. I will. I just will. Texting somebody. Yeah. Okay. Here's the deal. I'll throw it this way. While I'm waiting to see if I can actually say this or not, I'll put some hints out there. This is a really good player we've talked about a lot, who's going to get traded this year. And we've never really mentioned the fact that he might get traded to the Penguins.
The Penguins.
All right, so it's okay, and I can say it, Matt Duchene. There you go.
Interesting.
Okay. Matt Duchene to the Penguins is a big rumor right now, and it's from whenever I get a text from like 3 people within like a couple minutes of each other. So I think that when you think about what they've done with Fleury and they've opened up some space, right? You would think that that's for getting Bonino in, I thought, or getting something else. We're getting a series of, like, we have so many players we talked about yesterday that they have to sign.
Yeah.
Maybe they are looking at something like this, and maybe they're willing to trade somebody, I don't know, one of their defensemen. Oli Mata, somebody else, involved in this deal.
Yeah, I mean, Mata's on a new deal, so, I mean, Duchene makes $6 million. That would... that would lighten the cap hit, obviously. But, yeah, I mean,
there's more to it, obviously, but it's just something that I got to look into. And I think there's going to be a lot more like this coming up. So keep your ears peeled.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Mike. Thanks for asking you to jump up. But thank you so much, guys, for more checks coming in as we speak. Thank you guys so much for the patience. There will be probably other podcasts, like this where I have to jump in or jump off. But like I said, it's there's only one of me. So fortunately, Mike and Russ can talk. You guys are good at that. So and fill in space. Remember that the buzz is just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow.